Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Stars of the Golden Age, a show that highlights the lives of legends from film, music, and the birth of television during Hollywood's Golden Age, with a special emphasis on their lives behind the scenes. I am your host, Erin Carlson. Welcome back to Stars of the Golden Age.
And welcome back to The Wanted Files.
I'm Erin, and today we are bringing you another special crossover episode.
If you've listened to our previous collaborations, you know we love exploring the moments where Hollywood history and unsolved mysteries collide.
And today's story may be one of the most haunting examples of that. More than 75 years later, no one knows exactly what happened. Today, we're discussing the disappearance of Jean Spangler. Many have heard of Jean Spangler in regards to her sensationalized disappearance. But who really was Jean Spangler? Who was she as a woman? What had her life held before her tragic disappearance? Let me tell you about the woman behind the headlines, Jean Spangler. Jean Elizabeth Spangler was born on September 2nd, 1923, in Seattle, Washington, to parents Martin and Florence Spangler. She was the youngest of 4 children, which, with the addition of Jean, included 2 boys and 2 girls. The family moved around a bit and finally settled in Los Angeles within the first decade or so of Jean's life. Jean attended and graduated from Franklin High School in Los Angeles in 1941. Jean Spangler was an outgoing individual and was very socially driven. She had developed a passion for acting at a fairly young age, so when she graduated from high school in 1941, she had one thing on her mind: becoming a Hollywood star. She already had the advantage of living in Los Angeles for half of her childhood, so the first hurdle was done. Actually getting into pictures, that was a whole different hurdle, and a much larger one. Hundreds of other young women her age were flocking towards the Hollywood sign, chasing their dreams of stardom. They all thought they had the beauty and talent to make it, but very few ever would. Still, Jean Spangler was going to try. She was a step ahead from the new girls in town, knowing the ins and outs of the business to a certain extent. She had grown up surrounded by it. Shortly after graduating in the summer of 1941, Jean Spangler found work as a model for a local department store, and she found other work that also required her special combination of beauty, charm, and social ease. Jean was described as having, quote, an inexhaustible energy for meeting new people, particularly those in the upper income tax brackets, end quote. Not only was she seeking a future as a Hollywood starlet, but she also kept an eye open for a potential life as the wife of a wealthy and well-connected man. And she knew just the right environments to place herself in to hopefully achieve that, and just the right things to say. When she was still just 18 years old, Jean Spangler landed a job as a dancer at Earl Carroll's Theater on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood. Carroll's Theater was just a few years old, having been built in 1938, and the entertainment provided there was similar to lavish Broadway musical revues or future Las Vegas shows. Larger-than-life, extravagant productions, reminiscent of Flo Ziegfeld's productions a generation prior, dinner theater style. Earl Carroll had begun in New York, and it was there that he earned his nickname, Troubadour of the Nude. He was also said to be, quote, the most notorious connoisseur of female flesh in the history of show business, end quote. Above the entrance to his theater, Carroll had these words displayed. Through these portals pass the most beautiful girls in the world. And Jean Spangler became one of those girls at just 18 years old. A couple other notable names who had 10 years as showgirls at the Earl Carroll Theater are Mamie Van Doren and Yvonne DiCarlo. And many prominent names in the film industry could regularly be found in the audience. Although today these descriptions of the Earl Carroll Theater may sound very risque, especially considering the typical morality of the 1940s. In that time, becoming a showgirl at the Earl Carroll Theater was considered a very big honor. It was a huge step in the right direction for hopeful Hollywood starlets. And with Jean Spangler's natural energy, magnetism, and enthusiasm, she was able to rise above what many of the other showgirls were able to offer. She put her all into her work there, and she made any and all connections she could make. Jean Spangler met many prominent men while dancing at the Earl Carroll Theater, and the one she decided to settle down with surprised many who knew her well. Many who thought she would seek a man a bit wealthier and a bit more connected in the film industry. Instead, it was a plastics manufacturer named Dexter Benner. Benner did well for himself, but his life was far from the entertainment circles Jean had really been seeking. Still, she liked Dexter Benner, and then she fell in love with him. Jean and Dexter were married in 1942 when Jean was just 19 years old. Just months after getting married, Dexter Benner was drafted and shipped off to the South Seas during World War II, but not before getting Jean pregnant. Their daughter, Christine, was born in April of 1944. It seems Dexter Benner assumed that his showbiz wife would file that past away, and instead intended to put all of her energies going forward into being a wife, mother, and keeper of the home. Well, he was very mistaken. Jean had no intentions of giving up her dreams of stardom or her rich social life. In Brenner's absence during his enlistment, Jean engaged in affairs with other men. One in particular was especially damaging, a physically abusive serviceman known as Lieutenant Scotty. Jean was still working at the theater, and she quite frequently arrived with bruises and black eyes. When Jean tried to break things off with Lieutenant Scotty, he would attack her. On at least one occasion, he threatened to kill her. It was an incredibly dangerous situation, and the relationship was impossible for the married Jean to keep a secret with all of the turmoil and physical scars she was enduring. When Jean's husband Dexter returned from the war in late 1945, he found his family's bank account completely drained and the family car wrecked, all reportedly at the hands of Jean and Lieutenant Scotty. Dexter Benner, to no one's surprise, was incredibly upset, and he filed for divorce immediately. He wasn't willing to even try moving forward after coming home from war to that mess. He was done. There was much more to the marriage's downfall than Jean's infidelities. It had never been a happy union. Dexter Benner was a controlling and often cruel husband, and Jean was unfaithful. There was plenty of blame to go around. The divorce could have been a quick and easy process, but they had little Christine to consider. And they both wanted her, and they didn't want to share. A heated custody battle ensued for several months in 1946, and in the end, Dexter Benner was able to convince the judge that Jean had abandoned their daughter throughout her affairs, and she was not fit to have sole custody of their child. Jean was awarded visitation, but Benner defied the orders and blocked her from seeing their daughter any chance he could. If it were up to him, Christine would never see her mother again, and he supposedly voiced this exact sentiment to some. Jean was not willing to give up the fight for her child, and 2 years after their initial court battle, she declared war again. This time, Dexter Benner's smear campaign did not work. Jean had proved herself as a fit mother, not the monster her ex-husband had made her out to be. And she was finally awarded custody of 4-year-old Christine. Jean had triumphed, and she could finally move on with her life as a mother, dancer, and hopeful actress. Jean Spangler was just 25 years old, and she had her whole life ahead of her. Jean finally got her foot in the door of the highly sought-after Hollywood film studios after the custody mess was settled, and she appeared in a few movies in small, uncredited bit parts, extra roles. She joined the Screen Extras Guild, and she intended to put all of the energy she had available into rising the ranks in the film industry. She appeared in very small bit parts, mostly dance numbers, in films like the Betty Grable films, When My Baby Smiles at Me and Wabash Avenue, and 1949's Chicken Every Sunday, all for 20th Century Fox. She also appeared in Warner's Young Man with a Horn, starring Lauren Bacall, Doris Day, and Kirk Douglas. She couldn't quite get a step up from those extra roles, but she was still content with the work. In reality, this was the Hollywood film world most of those working within it lived. It wasn't exactly the lifestyle she yearned to have, but it was sufficient enough to support herself, her daughter, and help pay hospital bills for her ailing father. Money was still tight, though, and Jean and Christine lived with her mother, Florence, and her sister-in-law, Sophie, in the Park La Brea complex in Los Angeles. Sadly, Jean's brother, Sophie's husband, had been killed in the war. As the months of 1949 went by, with the world anticipating a new decade and settling into the many changes in Hollywood with the decline of the studio system, Jean seemed to be filled with her own anticipation indeed. Friends later recalled her telling them about a large sum of money she was expected to receive. The details are blurry, if existent at all. Maybe it was through a hopeful romantic relationship, or maybe it was something much deeper, like extortion. Jean dated steadily throughout 1949. She had a vibrant and busy social life. She dated a wide array of men, from actor Ronald Reagan to multimillionaires to men connected with the mafia like Johnny Stompanato. Some of the men she dated were well-respected potential partners. Others were not. Although she dated often, she was known to be very cautious with who she shared her time with. She was careful around people she didn't know and avoided being alone with unfamiliar men. She spent many evenings away from home, but she always made sure to call her daughter at bedtime to say goodnight. Jean has been labeled as a party girl over and over in the decades following her disappearance. But it seems she was balancing her home life, social life, and career well. She was a young single woman, and she had the energy and drive to make it all happen. Let's talk a bit about what this life was really like. What it was like to be a nightclub dancer and working actress trying to make it big in the movie industry in late 1940s Hollywood. What the world was shown during that time was glamour and elegance and sophistication, dreams coming true, champagne and sparkles as far as the eye could see. The reality, however, was much darker, and for many actresses trying to make it in the business, it was very bleak and difficult. Many were hanging on by nothing but hope. As Greta Garbo once said, If only those who dream about Hollywood knew how difficult it all is. It was indeed a difficult world. It was grueling and tested one's strength. Women had to put a lot of energy into gaining the future they wanted for themselves, sometimes doing things they did not want to do. And it very rarely paid off. Jean did seem to enjoy her life as a nightclub showgirl, but it came with its fair share of disadvantages. Jean was known by regular male patrons as the tall drink of water, and no doubt was the victim of regular sexual harassment. That lifestyle meant late nights and unwanted advances, but it also meant connections into the glamorous life she was really seeking. Jean Spangler seemed to shine in this kind of high-energy life. In her pursuit of film stardom, Jean rehearsed tirelessly, even for small extra roles. She went to auditions, and when she did, she started her charm right at the gate, memorizing the names of gate guards at all the major studios. She took acting lessons. She was doing everything she could to advance her career. She believed in herself so fully, and she put in the extremely hard work required to make it in the industry. This was the life for countless hopeful Hollywood starlets. A lot of hustle, a lot of time, a lot of sacrifices, and a whole lot of hope. This was the life Jean Spangler had chosen to live. These are the dreams she held so tightly in her heart. Having a rich social life was very important to Jean. It fed her spirit. And if it could help boost her career, even better. She was optimistic and hopeful about her future. And then everything changed. In the early evening hours of October 7th, 1949, Jean Spangler left the home she shared with her mother, her sister-in-law, and her daughter for what seemed to be an ordinary Friday evening. But after that, the record gets much, much darker.
By the fall of 1949, Jean Spangler was trying to balance a lot of things at once. She was a young mother, an aspiring actress, a woman rebuilding her life after a difficult marriage and a contentious custody battle. And on Friday, October 7th, 1949, there was every reason to believe she expected the next day to arrive like any other. That evening, Jean left her home in Los Angeles. According to family members, she told them she was going to work on a film set and later planned to meet regarding child support payments from her ex-husband. She was dressed for an evening out and carried her purse. Nothing about her departure appeared unusual. Nothing suggested this would be the last time her family would see her. And at some point that night, Jean vanished. No confirmed witness has ever been able to place exactly where she went after leaving home. No one can say with certainty who she met. No one can say with certainty where she spent her final known hours. And in a case filled with theories and speculation, that uncertainty would become one of the most defining features of this case. Because unlike many investigations, there would be no crime scene, no body, no clear moment where investigators could say with confidence, this is where something happened. There was simply a woman who stepped out into the Los Angeles night and never came back. For her family, the first signs of trouble came when Jean failed to return home. For investigators, it would mark the beginning of a mystery that has now lasted more than 75 years. As investigators began retracing Jean's final hours, one of the first things they did was try to confirm her plans for that evening. As I mentioned, her family said she was going to work on a film set, but when the police contacted the studios, they found no record that Jean had been scheduled to work that night. That discovery immediately raised questions. Had Jean simply misspoken? Had she accepted work that wasn't officially recorded? Or had she used the job as an explanation because she had other plans she didn't want to discuss? No one knows. Investigators continued searching for anyone who might have seen her that evening. Eventually, they found one possible witness. A saleswoman at a farmer's market in Los Angeles recalled seeing Jean at around 6 o'clock that evening. According to her account, Jean appeared to be waiting for someone. She wasn't described as distressed. She wasn't seen arguing with anyone. She simply appeared to be expecting a meeting. If the sighting is accurate, it may be the last known reported sighting of Jean Spangler. And like so many details in this case, it raises more questions than answers. Who was she waiting for? Did this person ever arrive? Was it someone she knew well enough to meet willingly? Or was this simply an ordinary encounter that has taken on a greater significance because of everything that happened after? We don't know, but what we do know is that after that evening, the trail goes cold. No verified sightings, no phone calls, no confirmed movements. Just a young mother standing in a crowded public place waiting for someone, and then disappearing into one of Hollywood's oldest mysteries. As investigators worked through Jean's final known plans, one name immediately stood out: her ex-husband, Dexter Benner. According to family members, Jean had said that she intended to meet him that evening regarding child support payments. On its face, this wasn't unusual. The two shared a daughter, and financial matters between former spouses often require conversation and meetings. But in a missing person case, investigators have to start with the people a person was expected to see. So police turned their attention to Dexter. They asked a simple question: had he met with Jean that night? His answer was no. Benner told investigators that he had not seen Jean for weeks and had no plans to meet with her on October 7th. Importantly, his account was supported by another witness, his new wife, who corroborated his version of events. From an investigative standpoint, that changed the shape of the lead, because while the planned meeting had initially seemed promising, it quickly became something else entirely. Another question: why had Jean told her family she was meeting Dexter if no meeting had been arranged? Had she simply intended to contact him? Had there been a misunderstanding? Or had she just used the meeting as an explanation because she was actually planning to see someone else? This uncertainty would become a reoccurring frustration in this investigation. The ex-husband lead mattered because it was part of Jean's stated plans for that evening, but it didn't provide investigators with the suspect. It didn't even provide them with a location, and it didn't explain where Jean went after she was last seen. Instead, it left police exactly where they had been before: a missing woman, an incomplete timeline, and a growing list of unanswered questions. On October 9, 1949, 2 days after Jean disappeared, the case took a dramatic turn. A park employee discovered a woman's purse near the Ferndale entrance of Griffith Park. For investigators, this was the first real piece of evidence. The purse was identified as belonging to Jean Spangler, and its condition immediately raised concerns. Reports stated that the purse appeared damaged, with the straps torn as though it may have been pulled or ripped away. That detail has fueled speculation for decades. It could suggest a struggle, but it also could not prove one. The damage may have been connected to her disappearance, or it may not have been. Unfortunately, the purse could not answer that question. But what investigators found inside would make the case even more mysterious. There was a note, a short, unfinished message that read, "Kirk, can't wait any longer, going to see Dr. Scott. It will work best this way while Mother is away." There was no signature, no date, no explanation. The reference to Mother was especially unsettling because Jean's mother was reportedly away at the time, leaving Jean's young daughter in the care of relatives. Almost immediately, two names became the focus of the investigation: Kirk and Dr. Scott. Who were they? Were they real people, aliases, code names? And what exactly would work best while someone's mother was away? The note seemed as though it should unlock the mystery. Instead, it created even more questions. Police searched Griffith Park extensively. The park was rugged in places, with canyons, brush, and countless locations where evidence could potentially be hidden. But the search produced nothing else. No body, no additional belongings, no clear signs of violence, no definitive indication of where Jean had gone or what had happened to her. And that absence is important here. The purse provided investigators with something tangible to work with, but it didn't provide answers. It provided a clue, and perhaps the only clue. The one detail that would come to define this case for decades to come: a damaged purse, a cryptic note, and a woman who had seemingly vanished without a trace. Of everything discovered inside Jean's purse, the note became the one item that captured the public's attention more than anything else. At first glance, it almost reads like the opening of a mystery novel, and almost immediately, one particular possibility captured the public's attention. Just months before her disappearance, Jean had worked as an extra on the film Young Man with a Horn, which starred actor Kirk Douglas. Suddenly, there was a Kirk in the note and a famous Kirk in Jean's orbit. For some people, that was enough to connect the dots. But investigators don't work on coincidence alone. Police contacted Kirk Douglas, who told them that he had only briefly interacted with Jean and barely knew her. He also stated that he had been in Palm Springs at the time of her disappearance. Investigators didn't find any evidence tying him to Jean's disappearance, and he was not treated as a suspect. A name appearing in a note is not proof of involvement and could very well be a coincidence. A coincidence is not evidence. But a famous name can sometimes pull attention away from more likely explanation, simply because it's memorable. In fact, that might be one of the most enduring lessons of the Jean Spangler case. The note feels significant, even though we've never gotten any information from it. To this day, no one knows with certainty who Kirk was. Some researchers believe it may have been Kirk Douglas. Others think it may have been an entirely different person, someone never identified publicly. And then there's the other name, Dr. Scott, a clue that may have been incredibly important or completely misunderstood. The note has generated theories for decades precisely because it seems so close to an answer. But instead of providing clarity, it only deepened the mystery, because in the end, investigators were left with exactly what they had before: a missing woman and a damaged purse. As the days turned into weeks, investigators found themselves in a frustrating position. Jean Spangler had gone missing. Her purse with a note inside it was found inside a park. But almost nothing else. No body, no crime scene, no eyewitnesses that could place Jean's movements. Cases like this create a vacuum, and vacuums tend to fill with theories. Over the years, several explanations have emerged. Some were taken seriously by investigators, and others grew from rumor and speculation. None, however, have ever been proven. One of the earliest and most widely discussed theories centered around the note itself. Kirk can't wait any longer, going to see Dr. Scott. Police began asking a simple question. Was Dr. Scott actually a doctor, or was it some kind of code name? Some friends and acquaintances reportedly told investigators that Jean may have believed she was pregnant, or that she had spoke about an abortion. At the time, abortion was illegal in California, and that's important because it meant that a woman seeking to end a pregnancy often had few safe options. Some sought out secret procedures performed by unlicensed individuals or medical professionals operating outside the law. If something went wrong, there was another problem. The people involved had every reason to avoid the police. Investigators considered the possibility that Jean had gone to meet someone for an illegal procedure and died as a result. Some reports over the years have referred to a mysterious doc figure supposedly connected to this theory, but that's where the trail becomes a little bit difficult. Police never proved that this person even existed, and no clear suspect was ever identified publicly. No evidence emerged that definitively linked Jean to an illegal abortion, and no body was ever found to support or refute this theory. In many ways, the abortion theory became compelling because it seemed to explain several pieces at once: the note, the secrecy, the disappearance. And to this day, this theory remains exactly what it was in 1949, a theory. Then there's the theory that perhaps contributed the most to Jean's enduring mystique: organized crime. Jean's work in Hollywood and in her social life brought her into contact with nightclubs, entertainers, and people who moved through circles that occasionally overlapped with members of Los Angeles' criminal underworld. As investigators looked into her association, some writers and researchers began examining possible connection to individuals linked to notorious mob figure Mickey Cohen. One name that repeatedly appears in these discussions is Davy O'Goole. O'Goole was a known associate of Cohen, and in one of the stranger coincidences in the story, O'Goole also reportedly disappeared around the same time as Jean. For some people, that timing was impossible to ignore. Was there a connection? Did the two disappearances have something to do with one another, or was it simply an extraordinary coincidence? The problem is that the investigators never uncovered evidence proving that Jean's disappearance was connected to organized crime. No witness came forward with definitive information. No physical evidence tied the case to the mob. No charges were ever filed. And yet the theory endures, partly because organized crime has certain gravity in the public imagination. It turns mysteries into conspiracies, it offers villains, it offers motive, and perhaps most importantly, it offers answers where none exist. But once again, the evidence simply isn't there to move this theory beyond speculation. As the investigation continued, another thing began happening. The story took on a life of its own. Newspapers published theories, readers sent in their tips, people claimed sightings, and rumors spread. Some articles connected Jean's disappearance to broader post-war fears: young women vanishing, violence beneath the glamour, and the idea that Los Angeles could be dazzling on the surface while dangerous underneath. In some ways, Jean's case became bigger than Jean herself. Theories multiplied, new suspects appeared, stories became embellished, and as the years passed, it became increasingly difficult to separate what was supported by evidence from what had simply been repeated often enough to feel true. Because at its core, the case remained remarkably simple. A woman left home one evening. She was seen waiting for someone, and then vanished. Everything else came afterward. So by this point, it's helpful to separate the evidence from the mythology. because the Jean Spangler case has accumulated a lot of both. So here's what we know. We know that Jean Spangler left her home on the evening of October 7, 1949. We know she was last reportedly seen around 6 o'clock near Los Angeles' farmers market, where a witness believes she appeared to be waiting for someone. We know she never returned home. We know that 2 days later, her purse was discovered near the Ferndale entrance of Griffith Park. We know that inside that purse was a note addressed to Kirk that referenced seeing Dr. Scott. And we know that despite decades of theories, investigations, and renewed public interest, Jean Spangler has never been found. This case remains unresolved. Now here's what we don't know. We don't know whether Jean left voluntarily, if she was harmed, or if she encountered something or someone no one has ever been fully able to reconstruct. We don't know who Kirk was. We don't know whether Dr. Scott was a real person, a code name, or someone who was never identified. We don't know whether the note referred to a pregnancy, an illegal abortion, a medical issue, or something else. We don't know whether any of Jean's social or professional connections had anything to do with her disappearance. And we don't know whether the organized crime theory is a meaningful lead or simply one of the many explanations that emerged in the absence of answers. Perhaps most importantly, we don't know what happened after Jean Spangler was last seen. Did she meet the person she was waiting for? Did she go somewhere willingly? Did something happen unexpectedly? Or did the answer lie somewhere entirely outside these theories? We simply don't know. Most mysteries eventually give us something: a body, a confession, a witness, a definitive answer of some type. The disappearance of Jean Spangler has given us none of those things. Instead, it has given us a handful of facts and a lifetime of questions. And after more than 75 years, those questions remain exactly where they were, waiting for answers. Before we close, I'd like to come back to the person at the center of this story, because Jean Spangler has often been remembered as the missing starlet, the Hollywood mystery, the woman with a cryptic note, the case with mob theories and unanswered questions. But before she became any of those things, she was a person. She was a mother, a daughter, a working performer trying to build a career in an industry that promised glamour but often delivered uncertainty. She had plans. She had responsibilities. She had people who expected her to come home. And then one evening, she walked out the door and simply never returned. No body was ever found. No one ever charged. No explanation has ever been proven. For her family, there's no resolution, no trial, no grave to visit. And that's one of the quiet tragedies of missing persons cases. The story doesn't end. It never really stops. It leaves everyone behind to wonder what happened next. In more than 75 years, the theories have multiplied, the rumors have grown, the mystery has become part of Hollywood folklore. But Jean Spangler deserves to be remembered as more than a mystery. She deserves to be remembered as a woman who still deserves answers. And after all these years, the case has still come back to the same question. What happened after Jean Spangler walked out the door?
Thank you so much for joining us for another crossover episode.
As always, we hope today's conversation helped bring attention back to the person at the center of this story.
Jean Spangler was more than a Hollywood mystery. She was a mother, an actress, and a woman whose future was never allowed to unfold.
And while the theories have grown over the decades, the facts remain surprisingly few.
Somewhere between the glamour of old Hollywood and the unanswered questions of a missing persons case, a real person was lost.
And after all these years, we're still left with the same question. What happened to Jean Spangler? If you enjoyed today's episode and love diving into old Hollywood, be sure to follow Stars of the Golden Age wherever you're listening right now.
And if you love unsolved mysteries, don't forget to follow The Wanted Files. Thank you so much for listening today. Reach for the positive in every day, be kind to everyone you encounter, support your independent podcasters, and have a great rest of your week. For this episode, I used the book, The Disappearance of Jean Spangler, The History of One of Hollywood's Most Enduring Unsolved Mystery by Charles River Editors. I also used an episode of Hollywood Chronicles titled The Mystery of Jean Spangler, an episode of Mysteries and Scandals, and IMDB.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.